Have you ever found yourself starting a file out the same way every time in Visual Studio? Maybe you always add an empty constructor, or you set it to public. Maybe you start out a WPF item by adding the rows and columns in. Instead of repeating yourself, you can create a custom item template that works just the way you want it to. Doing so can save you a lot of time and make sure you get things started right. In this video, we're going to create a couple custom item templates and see how to use them. Before we proceed, I do want to point out that in the description, there are links to get the source code for this video, to sign up for my mailing list, and to sign up for my Patreon page. Now, if you aren't a Patreon member, now is a great time to join. We are just a few dollars a month away from the next major milestone. Once we reach it, I'll be producing a behind-the-scenes mini documentary on how I create videos like this one. We'll start with identifying the topic, then do the research, write the script, record the video, make the necessary edits, and upload it to YouTube. Basically, everything you want to know about how I make YouTube videos. That video will only be available to Patreon members, just like the previous video where I gave members a tour of my office and my computer setup. Now, if you haven't come across me before, my name is Tim Corey, and it's my goal to make learning C# easier. One of the ways I do that is by teaching context. There are a lot of tutorials out there that just teach you what to do. I go a few steps beyond that to show you when to do it, why you should or should not do it, what pitfalls to avoid, and what the best practices are. Basically, I get you ready for the real world. If that's the type of training you're interested in, subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell icon to be notified when I release new videos. Okay, let's go over to Visual Studio, and we're going to create a blank project. Let's do this. Let's start with a project that's a .NET Core, not a console. Let's go to class library .NET Standard. Okay, we're going to create a very, very basic template to start off with. This will just be a new class file. What you name the project and solution really doesn't matter that much. So let's call this class templates, and we'll call a solution name item templates solution. We hit create. Now, once this creates, we'll have a class 1, which we always delete. It's the first thing you do. We'll say yes, we want to get permanently deleted. And then we add a new class. And we'll call this class simple class improvement, or simple class template. There we go. And this is just a class. Make it public, which we always do, and let's add a constructor, okay, with nothing else in it. So that's a very, very simple class file. I've made just 2 modifications. I made it public, and I created a constructor for it. That's all I did. Now let's turn this into a template that we can use next time instead of that template we created or used. So we use the class template, which is just this thing called class, or you can find it under code as class. And that's the template that we started from, but we made a couple modifications. So now if you go to the project menu, we come down here to export template. This is the easiest way to create a template. You can manually create a template. You can even right click on the solution and say add, and you will find under the project, if you search for extensions, and let's make sure it's C#, you can find the C# item template. You could do that, but that's a lot of manual work. This way, if you go to project, let's select our file first, project export template, we choose item template, we choose which project type we're in. Okay, so this is important here because if you have more than one project in your solution and it's not in the startup project, then this will not be the correct one. You have to change it. So make sure the template is in the correct project for what you selected. Hit next, and now it says which file is the item template. Well, it's just that one file there, simple class template.cs. I hit next, and this says what references do you want to add to this? Now this primarily is for built-in .NET Core references. So if you needed system.data to the DLL to be referenced in a .NET Core project, you could check that box. But typically, you won't check any of these. And if you really did have something, let's just say this is a template that uses Dapper. Well, you wouldn't check the box here for Dapper when you found Dapper in the list, because that's a NuGet package and it won't be installed in the other project, the new project you put it into. So, or not necessarily. So therefore, you wouldn't want to do it that way. You want to use the Dapper stuff, but then not reference it here. And what happens is you get red squigglies and we'll say, hey, you don't have Dapper installed. Go ahead and install Dapper. So that's the way to go. Typically, I would say you're not going to check any of these boxes. But if you brought something in that's already in the .NET Core, then maybe you would. But in general, leave it unchecked, hit next. This is where we get to do a couple things. A template name first. So let's call this the simple class template. And actually, let's put spaces in here. Simple class template. Template description. A very simple template that allows us to have a public class with a constructor. We can choose an icon image and preview image. We'll do an icon image later just to see what it does, but we're going to leave both of those blank for now. We'll use the built-in ones. It's going to output to this location, which is in my documents. So that's I have my documents in the OneDrive. Little tip there that if you're not already having OneDrive back up your documents, that's a great thing to do, because then your documents are available everywhere and you don't have to worry about your computer crashing. Now, obviously, if you have more files in your My Documents than you have storage space in OneDrive, that'd be a problem. But in my case, I pay for the I think it's 1 terabyte of storage in OneDrive, so I have plenty of space. So anyways, that's where my documents are located. And inside there, Visual Studio 2019, then / my exported templates. And that's where that zip file will be located. And this is the output of this export project wizard. It's a zip file with a number of files inside. Okay? Now here it says automatically import the template into Visual Studio. I am going to say no to that. And I'll show you why. I want to show you manually, and then we'll see it automatic as well. And then display an Explorer window on the Output Files folder. What that means is once that we hit Finish, and it zips up this stuff and puts it into this folder right here, then it will open up Explorer to that location, which makes it easy to work with this zip file. So we hit Finish. And it's open up Explorer, and here's that zip file. And if I open this up, we'll see that, actually let's zoom in here. We'll see we have a template icon.ico, which I did not select template icon, and so it used default. We also have the simple class template.cs. That's our actual .cs file. Notice it's called simple class template. And then we have my template.vs template. This is the configuration file. It's going to tell Visual Studio how this template is structured. Okay? So that's all that's in a zip file. Now, this zip file we can use as a whole. We don't unzip it somewhere. Okay? So let's copy this zip file, and we're going to come over to my item templates location, which in my case is in my documents folder. So for you, it's the same thing. Find your documents folder. Inside there, Visual Studio 2019 /templates /item templates. Okay? Because inside templates are item templates and project templates. We're not covering project templates today. We're just going to do item templates. We'll cover project templates in a future video. Now, by default, Visual Studio will put the zip file, when it said, remember it said copy to the templates location or import, I believe it was. And I said no. If we had said yes, it would put it in this folder right here, item templates. That's not great because of the fact this is a C# item template. and we want to put it inside the C# folder. So let's do that. I'm going to hit paste. Now we have simple class template. Okay, so now let's move these out of the way. You would think we could do right click and say add new item, but we don't see our new template here. And the reason why is because we have not yet restarted Visual Studio. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I just restarted Visual Studio. Let's open up the item template solution again. It's the same solution. We have our class item template. And actually, you know what? Let's create a new solution that's just a test solution. So that way it's totally clear that this template is not reusing anything from the template project or anything else. So let's create a new project. I'm going to create a WPF app.NET Core just so we can reuse it a couple different times. Okay? I'll hit next. We're going to call this our demo WPF app and demo WPF solution. Okay, we'll hit create in that. So this is a totally separate project. I have not kept anything open. It's all closed down as a brand new project. Now let's close even this out. And I'm going to add a new class file right in WPF app. So right click and say add new item, and notice at the very top, simple class template with its icon. Okay, that's the standard kind of default icon for custom templates. Now notice that the default name is simple class template 1. Okay, so this is the name of the template, the title we gave it, and then a 1 at the end. Not the greatest sample name, because it's kind of ugly. We don't want spaces in there. We don't want it to be called simple class template 1. We probably want class 1, or maybe even, I think class 1 is probably best, or demo class, or something like that. Okay? So that's one thing to address. But also notice up here, it says a very simple template allows us to have a public class with a constructor. So it told us exactly what this is doing. That's kind of helpful. That's our description that we entered. So let's call this test class. Now notice I'm calling it test class, which is different than the default of simple class template 1. I hit add. Public class test class with a constructor. Notice the constructor's name matches this, and notice the namespace is demo WPF app. I point this out because that was not the namespace of the template we created. The namespace was something different. It was the something item template something, I believe. Okay, and the name of our class was not test class. That's the name we gave it. So it's renamed this and this to match the name we gave it, and it's renamed the namespace as well. So now, very, very quickly, we can have a brand new template up and running that gives us exactly what we need to do. Okay, we've got the public class test class with a constructor. Now let's go back to our other solution. So let's go to our item template solution. And in here, we have our simple class template, and there's the namespace, class templates. So this has all been renamed based upon Visual Studio's understanding of the class name, the constructor name, and namespace names. So we didn't have to do anything for those to be replaced with what the values were in the new project. That's just kind of given to us for free. But let's see if we can elevate our game a little bit when it comes to creating templates. So let's create a new class. I'm just going to do a blank class. I'm not going to do a simple class template. No, you know what? I am, because why not? It's simple for us. Let's do complex class template. We'll only do 2 of these, so one's simple, one's complex. Really nice, it's already started for me, right? But let's take it a next step further which is I want to have, let's put this in above the class. I'm going to have some code comments that are required. So let's do / comments. I have a summary, and let's have also, let's just say it has a purpose. Okay, we're gonna have a stated purpose for what this code is supposed to do. Okay, this is what this class does. Now, created by. This will be who created our class file. Then we're going to have created on. This is the date and time that this file was created. This is cool enough as it is, where we have this already in place so that people say, oh, okay, I fill in these 3 blanks, and I'm good to go. But what if we can make it a little better? How about we do this? Put time with $signs on both sides. This is a template-specific keyword that get replaced. So when you create your template, what will happen is it will find these items that have the $sign on both sides. And this is a specific one, it's a special one that is already built into Visual Studio. And what it will do is it will replace this value, including the $signs, with whatever we're asking for. Now you can create your own custom ones if you want, but we're just going to do the built-in ones. This one is the date and time. So therefore, the person doing this template does not need to fill in the date and time. Created by username in $sign both sides. Username is whoever's logged onto the computer. Now I'm not on domain, so it's a little different because I believe my username is me, but I'm not positive. So it's not great, but it's something. We're going to find out what that is. So now I have 2 values filled in. I just need the purpose. That obviously isn't something I already have or can generate from a known value. I have to let the user fill that one in. But they now have to fill in 1 out of 3 instead of all 3. Now with .NET Core and .NET Standard, what we're starting to get used to is the idea of constructor injection and having logging available to us. So let's add logging to this class. So ILogger, control dot, we have to install the package Microsoft.extensions.logging.abstractions. Find and install latest version. And what that does is it just added a NuGet package for me, the Microsoft.extensions.logging.abstractions. And then it also added this using statement at the top using Microsoft.extensions.logging. So now I can say logging of type complex class templates and call it logger, and then control dot to create and initialize our field. So now we have our private read-only ILogger called _logger, and we're assigning that from the item being passed into our constructor. This is pretty standard .NET Core stuff, but it's not built into our new classes, at least not until now. Now we have something that is already scaffolded out for us, so we can start then at the next step instead of having to create these things. Notice we have our / comments with 3 different values. We have the class is now public. We have our constructor. We have ILogger being passed in. We have it being set as a private read-only variable, and we have that assignment. So those steps we do every single time, but not anymore. Now they're just done for us with our template. So let's create this template. Project, export template, item template, class templates, project. This time we want just the complex class template. We hit next. Now I could come down here and add Microsoft.extensions.logging.abstractions. However, that's a NuGet package. If I check that box, it's going to say, hey, you selected 1 or more assembly references that have not been pre-installed with Visual Studio. Having these references may prevent the use of this template if the user does not have the referenced assemblies installed. So instead, we're going to uncheck that and leave nothing checked and hit next. Let's call this our complex class template. A class template that includes a constructor that is set up for ILogger. Something like that. Icon. Let's add an icon. We're going to browse, and it's my demos folder. I have a library icon.ico file. Now, this is a pretty simple file. I use a tool called Metro Studio. So this is, let me load up Metro Studio real quick so I can show it to you. There we go. So I searched for library. I found one that looked pretty good, something like this. I hit the little icon here, and I made some changes. I made this white. You can change the color with this color picker, but I chose white. I chose a blank background instead of having a full background. Notice the background color right now is, there we go. You do something like that if you want. You can play around with it. Once you're done, you hit export. And you can export that to an ICO file. So that's what I did. And that's all free, by the way. Metro Studio is free. They just require you give them your email address, I believe. So there's a new icon file for us, just so we have something different. And this will be exported to that same location, but be called complex class template.zip. Let's leave the automatically import the template into Visual Studio checked and display the Explorer window on output files folder. We can uncheck that because we don't need to. We hit finish. And now if we go to our item templates, notice that it's outside of Visual C#, but we have our complex class template. Again, not available until you restart Visual Studio. We'll do that in just a minute. But we're not quite done. Let's do this. Let's open this up. So file open with Windows Explorer. And I'm going to take all three of these files and I'm going to export them right out to the item templates folder. Okay, just so we have something to work with. So there's the three files that we have. We have our item template icon, which is the same name, but it's a new icon. We have our class file, which if we open this up, let's do that real quick. Notice it's had some things replaced. So now it has root namespace. It has safe item name. It has safe item name and safe item name again. Because don't forget, our class name, we use that in the ILogger. So ILogger then put in angle brackets our class name. So that replaces it here as well. So what this has done is it's taken these out. This is the magic that happened where it knew what the namespace was and what the class name was when I created that new file off the template. So that's our CS file. Let's look at our template file. I'll open that up as well. And this is our template or VS template file. So the default name is complex class template.cs, which is also the name here. Well, I don't want the default name to be complex class template. That doesn't sound right. Let's make it class 1. Or class, actually. Class.cs. Remember, that's going to add the 1 at the end of it by default. There's our description. So you can make a modification to that if you wanted to. The sort order, if you want to change that, we'll leave that alone. The icon, the project type is C#. So it does know it's a C# project type. And then down here we have project item with no subtype that is a target file name of file input name.cs. Replace parameters is true. This again is the kind of the magic here, where what it's going to do is it's going to, whenever it finds parameters inside of this file right here, it's going to replace them with their actual values. If you change this to false, you'd have a whole bunch of $sign values in here still. So make sure you leave that to true. This is the name of the CS file that's the template, and we replace the file name with file input name. So that's the name you type in the box. Okay, so that's our template. We've made one change, which is to change the default name to class.cs, which remember it's going to put a 1 at the end of that, so it's going to say class1.cs. Let's hit save on this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up. Let's open this. Let's just hit open. This is actually 7-zip. It's okay. I'm going to drag this file, this VS template file, over into 7-zip and say, yes, I want to copy that file over, which replaces it with the new VS template file, which means that the zip file now has our changes. I can delete these files since they're no longer necessary. Now let's move this complex class template into Visual C#. So now there's two templates in here, a simple class template and a complex class template. Now, let's restart Visual Studio. Let's close it down. I'll start it back up. And we'll say demo WPF solution. And inside here, we already have our test class. So let's create a new one, add a new item. And now we have complex class template. Notice there's a little icon. It's a little different. It's black instead of white, and that's because of the dark theme. I think it replaces certain things. So I'm not a visual designer, so please don't look to me for guidance for making things pretty. But complex class template, select that. Notice it says class 1. If you select simple class template, it says simple class template 1. But complex class template says class 1. Much more in line with what we get from, let's say, this file, also known as class 1. Okay, page 1, view 1, tab page 1, interface 1. So these are the standard styles that I'm now following. So let's rename this. Let's call this complex demo and hit add. And it says created by, yep, there's my login, me. Not the greatest login name. If I had an actual login name, it'd probably say T Corey, but I don't have an actual login name because I'm not on a network, and I set it up with my email address that starts with me. So it is what it is. But you do have your date and time created. That's local time to this computer. It's called complex demo, and we've got a read-only ILogger and a constructor that passes the logger in and replaces it. But notice the red squigglies. That's because we have not added that NuGet package to our project. But we control dot here and say install package Microsoft.extensions.logging.abstractions. We do that, then our class file is ready to go. If we had already installed that, so you've already installed it once, let's add another class. So add a new item, complex class. Let's call this complex demo 2. Hit OK. Notice no red squigglies because you've already added that NuGet package once. We already have the using statement, so we're all set up with everything. It's just you have to add that NuGet package in order to get this template to properly work. And that's only if you reference something that is in a NuGet package. So that's how a really simple class replacement would work. But let's try a different type of file. So let's go back to our item template project. So we'll say yes to saving this. And now you have our class templates. Let's add another project here. Oops, not an existing project. We want a new project. And we're going to say not extensions. Whoops. Double click there. All project types, and this type, actually we're just going to do WPF app.NET Core. Okay, and we'll call this our WPF templates. We'll create, we'll wait for this to be done. We'll close out. Before I do, I want to show you one real quick thing. It's a total sidebar, but this is something that just came out recently that's super awesome. We've been asking for it. We've been debating it. We've been talking about it. We've discussed how can we get around it and workarounds. Microsoft has added a little button you may have missed. And it's right here. See this little button right here? Pop out XAML. Check it out. I click it. And now I have my XAML in a separate window from my actual UI. Okay? Which means I can actually put this into as a tab, like so. So now I have my view, and I have my code behind, or my XAML design, and then my code behind. Or I can pop it out, and I can put it on a different screen. So I can have my XAML on one screen and my view on the other. Just a little helpful thing that has just recently come out. Okay, and I believe I popped that under. So there we go. So now we can close that out. But that's just a little something that is awesome that they added. I want to make sure you saw that. Okay, so right click on WPF templates and let's add a new user control. If you're doing MVVM, this is probably something you're going to do a lot. So let's call this our user control template. You're going to create a new user control. Then what you'll do is you'll probably do this to minimize this window a little bit. You'll say, well, I want to have a font size of 18. I want to have a font family of, I believe it's Sego UI. I can never pronounce that, but I believe that's how it's pronounced. Let's make sure. Yep, that's the one. So there's our new font and our new size. And then let's also add in our grid columns and rows. So grid.row definition. And we'd say, and this is always one of those pains because you forget, is it row or column? What's row definition? And then you say, well, row's got height on it. Yep, that's height. Auto. And then you do slash, which I actually say question mark for some reason. And then I paste it a couple times and I make the last one star. And I say, okay, let's do the same thing for column definitions. We do the same thing. And notice it's kind of tedious, but it's something you kind of have to do if you want to set up this style. And it's kind of get used to doing this, maybe even copy and paste from somewhere else. But what if all this setup work could be done for us? In fact, let's go back to our class templates and our complex class template. Let's grab this structure here and say, yep, we want the same thing in the code behind, which is right here. All right, so let's do that. And you know what? They had, if you noticed, interaction logic for the user control template. Well, we could do the same thing. So we could say the purpose is to supports the user control templates, but we can't say that here. We've got to use the replacement, which is project name. Supports the product name. Actually, it'd be item name. So not project name, which that'll work. Project name would be, in this case, WPF templates. So whatever project you put it into, that would be the name of it. But supports the item name, which is user control template view, like so. Okay. So also notice there is safe versions of all of these things. So safe item name, safe project name, safe root name as well. And I think that's it for safe ones. But what that is for is because if I put a space in the name of my project, or if I put a space in the name of my item, that would not be safe for using it as a .cs file or as a class file. And so what happens is a space becomes an underscore in those cases. So the safe version is where it replaces the spaces with underscores and under other characters you cannot have in certain places. It gets replaced. Now, we try and not use unsafe characters, so you don't have that differentiation. They'd be the same. But if you do use unsafe characters, using safe in front of item name would use the version that did not have those unsafe characters. Using it without the safe, so just item name, will be that spaced name. So first space name, if that's what you called it, versus first underscore name. Okay, so let's do this. Item, safe item name. Okay, in parens. So there, now we'll have the item name and safe item name, just so you can see the difference. And we'll use an unsafe name when we set this up. So now we have our code behind has some code, and our front end has some basic setup. All right. Now let's do the same thing. We'll save all, project, export template, item template. Notice we have to change from class templates to WPF templates. Hit next. I just want to export the user control template.xaml. Notice it does not allow me to select the code behind.cs file. That will come with the XAML file. Hit next. No inclusions for references. And we'll call this our standard user control. Standard user control. Let's put spaces in it. And our description, this is a standard user control file setup. No icon, no preview image, and we will automatically export it. We'll not show it in Explorer. Hit finish, and we do that in our item templates. Let's move these over to the other screen. Go up to item templates, and you'll see standard user control. Now let's open this up, and we'll pull out just the template file, and we'll edit that in Notepad++. And once we do that, here's our file. We're going to change this default name to be user control.xaml. So we'll say user control 1 instead. Okay? And that should be it. We can close, I'll close that out just so it's closed. And I'm going to drag this over to my zip file. I'm going to say yes to overwrite it. And then I'll delete that template file. So now I have this standard user control. I can move this into my Visual C#. But if you notice, let's just look. It won't be there yet, but the other two are. If I right click and I say add new item, they're just here in the main section. If I have a code, they're not there. Data, general, WPF, they're not anywhere except for in this main Visual C# items list. How do you change that? How do you move these around? Well, what we can do is notice these folders here, code, data, general. Well, the first two, simple and complex templates, are code. Let's put just a simple one in code, and we're going to put the new one in a folder called WPF, and we'll create a new folder or a new sub-item called custom. Okay, we'll put the complex one there. So how you do that? Create a folder. Let's create one called custom. That's where our complex class template goes. Let's create one called WPF. Whoops. Come on. And we'll create one more, and this one was called code. So the simple class template goes into code, and our standard user control goes into WPF. All right. So now you have subfolders underneath the Visual C#. Now what we can do is we can close this out, close it all out, restart Visual Studio, and we'll open up our demo WPF solution. Once we do that, then let's add a new template. So new item. Notice they don't show up anymore in this default list. But we go to code, there's simple class template. If we go to WPF, there's standard user control. And notice down here custom, which wasn't there before. But now we have it there, and we have complex class template. So you can create your own structure even if you wanted to with this. Now you've already seen how to do a complex class template and a simple class template. Let's add a WPF control for standard user control called user control 1, which just happens to match, come down here, user control 1 for user control. So we've matched that same naming structure. Let's come down here and we'll call this our test control. And again, this is in a brand new solution, brand new project, different namespaces, everything. Hit add. When we do, we have our test control, which has a font size of 18, our correct font family. We have our row definitions and grid definitions. I'm sorry, our row and column definitions. And let's look at our code behind, which it supports the test control. Oh, I forgot to name it something besides that's unsafe. We'll do that in just a minute. So test control and test control. By me, test control, our constructor as well. Let's create a new one to show the unsafe name. So we have standard user control. We'll call this our unsafe name control, like so. Notice the spaces. Hit add. And notice here, it's kind of hard to see, but let's zoom in a little bit here. Unsafe underscore name underscore control. That's the safe name. And if we come over here and look on the right, the file is called unsafe space name space control. That's the unsafe name. So this is the safe name with the underscores. Let's go to our code behind, and there is the unsafe name. There is the safe name. Okay, so that shows you the difference and how you can use that. All right, so that's how you'd use an item template, even a more complex one like a WPF template. Now let's go back over to the other solution. So this is the item template solution. And in here, let's right click and say add new project type. I just want to show you what the item type would be like. So extensions. So C# item template. We hit next. And let's call this our manual item template. Let's change the framework. So right now it's using framework 4.8. It doesn't give me an option to do .NET Core. So I hit create. And now we have this item template. And this is a little bit intimidating. Okay, you have your class file. That's what you have to modify. Notice the if statement here. This is kind of neat. If the target framework version is greater than or equal to 3.5, then add a using system.link. So if it's above 3.5, then which is .NET Framework, then add a using system.link because that's something you'll probably want to use. But notice that you get red squigglies. You can't really debug this or make sure it works because it's not usable in this state. So your template, you have to go through and manually modify these things to be what you want. So description, not that hard. Name, also not that hard. But the default name, there you go, that's that class.cs, which is nice that it does it like that. But if you change the class to be something else, you have to rename it down here and make sure that you specify the replace parameters. And it's a little harder. Now, the nice thing here is you can add this to source control and put it into a repository somewhere so that you can version it. The downside is it's not nearly as easy as our right-click, our project export template method. So here's what I'd recommend. I would recommend, if you can get away with it, just do your project export template. Normally, I tell you to avoid those kind of things, make a repeatable task. So when it comes to publishing your application, you can right-click publish, but don't. Use a repeatable task like an Azure DevOps, where it's an automatic CI/CD pipeline where it continuously integrates and continuously deploys your project. But in this case, you probably won't be modifying these classes that often or these templates. In fact, maybe never or almost never. It's more likely that you'll create new templates and deprecate or get rid of old templates. In that case, there's not a need for this full pipeline of development and deployment around templates. So I would say, because of the simplicity, I would just do your project export templates method instead of doing this full project item template. Okay, so that's what I'd recommend. It's just easier. It creates all this stuff for you correctly, and it makes it a little easier to then come in and just make the 1 or 2 tweaks you need to, rather than starting not from scratch, but starting from a place that you still have to do a lot of modifications to. Okay, so that's one thing I want to cover, is that manual item project or item template type. One question you'll probably have is, how do I distribute these? Well, you can distribute them inside your team with just those zip files. So if we just came over here and I said, you know what, I've got some really cool templates. Let's take all of these, I'll zip them up, tell you to extract them inside your Visual C# folder. Cool. If I have a new one, I can say, okay, take this zip file and put it inside your WPF folder inside of Visual C#. We're all developers here. It's not like you're giving this to an end user, you're giving this to a developer. So it's more likely they can do this. That's still a manual process, but again, how often are you doing this? If you're doing it a lot, maybe you're not really understanding what the project template idea is. Your templates probably shouldn't change that much. This is a optimization process that should happen once and then allow you to use that repeatedly. If you keep changing your templates, then you're losing the benefits of those templates, of that repetition. Now, in the beginning, obviously, be creating lots and lots, probably. And I say lots and lots, I'm saying like 5 or 10 or 15 as you do different things. But it should slow down rather quickly. That's the manual way. You can create what's called a V6 file, VSIX. And that will allow you to install 1 or more item templates onto any Visual Studio that you specify. So that's where we get things like these extensions, manage extensions. You could get online project templates from this list. Well, you could create your own V6 file that has your own project templates and then distribute that V6 file. They could install that just by double-clicking on it, and it would install into their project templates. Or you could distribute it through a store or through a website. That's a possibility. Okay, I'm not going to cover that today. That's well beyond the scope of this video, but I will in the future. Okay, so that's another thing you'll probably be asking about. Probably the final question you'll be asking about is project templates. I just covered item templates, but if you notice, if I say project export template, let's hit yes for saving. Notice project templates. You can select this and hit next and fill this in. It looks very, very similar. It will create a similar class template.zip file, which tells you it goes in the templates project templates folder. And yes, it does. And if you're using Visual Studio 2017 or earlier, that works great. You just do that, and it shows up just like your item templates, but it's a project template and it just works. I have not found that it works, at least for my version of Visual Studio 2019. I'm still tracking down why that is. I think it has to do with a new dialog. So the new dialog here, so if we say the start window, this dialog right here. This doesn't show the project templates correctly. They don't show it all. And I'm not quite sure why yet. So I'm still trying to track that down to find out what changed in 2019. When I find out, I'll create another video on project templates. That's another one of those beneficial things. But for now, at least with item templates, I think this fully covers how to work with them. Now note that this item template solution, I'm not going to build it. I'm not going to run it. There's nothing to do in this. In fact, I could have called it template or solution 1, project 1, and class 1 inside of it. It doesn't matter. However, what I would do is I would call it item template solution like I just did, and call it class templates, WPF templates, and on down the list. WinForm templates, ASP.NET templates, whatever you want to do, different projects. Inside there have your different named templates based upon the name you're going to give that template. So the class file simple class template corresponds to the simple class template item template. So that way you can put this solution in source control, and while it is a couple of steps to create a new template based upon these items, that's all it is a couple of steps. So if I want to modify this to add that the / comments, I can just do like that, paste it in. I could save it, and now I can do the project, export template, item template, class templates, simple class template, and fill in these values again, and overwrite that zip file. And now I have an upgraded item template for the simple class template. So not a lot of steps, doesn't take a lot of work. You have to get your template title and description and the icon if you use one. And then you also have to rename to say class.cs instead of simple class template.cs for your default name. But that's about it. Okay, so if you keep this solution in source control, now you can at least version this, and it's not that hard to upgrade your templates that have been based upon this. And you have a list of all the different templates that have been created out of this project. Okay, so just some ideas and things to think through and work through. I would love to hear what templates have you created or do you want to create that you think will make your life easier. Get creative, think them through, leave them in the comments down below. Not the whole template, please don't do that. Don't put source code in inside YouTube because it often flags as spam. But instead, just tell me the idea, the concept. So I create a template that, set up a Windows form. My goodness. I always change the font size. I always, redo the size of the form itself. I change the default font and a few other things that I do. Well, I could do all those once and then save that as a template. All right. So what do you do and what do you plan on doing to make your life a little easier? Okay. Leave those down in the comments. I appreciate that. Thanks for watching. And as always, I am Tim Corey.